Welcome to What Makes You Tick Best Bits. If you are looking to profitably scale from 5 to 25 million plus ARR, this is the episode for you. We've taken what is probably the episode that more founders have emailed me about than any we've ever done, and we've turned it into a bite-sized chunk for you to enjoy. It's all about mastering your ICP to profitably scale from that really risky and challenging 5 million range up to 25 million plus ARR from the operator in this space, Paul Wingfield. Enjoy this masterclass. I know it's going to add value to your business. If you want the full episode, we'll put a link in the show notes. Enjoy. Three things I see at this kind of stage, and it'd be good to get your view on it. Challenges around this whole not having a structured way of tackling their ICP in this next stage of growth is, one, it's such a narrow ICP that really there isn't the kind of market that could really be obtained. There isn't the sum that businesses could actually be able to scale over, and they kind of realize afterwards, actually, this isn't big enough for us. So they've got too many AEs fighting over too small a pie, and that causes a problem. Another one would be there's way too many. Like, you can sell this to anyone, but they haven't really gone, look, that we can sell it to all these people, but who should we focus on? Where are we strongest? And then the third one is businesses who have reached a certain level of growth in commercial, SMB, and go, right, cool, let's go to enterprise.
Yeah.
What's your view on those challenges that I've just pointed out?
They're all like super prevalent challenges, definitely. I feel like currently the second one is probably the most common that I see, is that, again, because of conditions 3 years ago, you go, oh, we can afford to reach everybody now. So we don't have to focus on one vertical, and that vertical could be industry, it could be size of business, it could be geographical location. It could be, stage of business. It doesn't, when you say like ICP, people automatically think industry, don't they? You say ICP, who do you sell to? Oh, we sell to, education, or we sell to, media or marketing departments or finance. But realistically, that vertical could be, it could be anything. It could be, like I said, it could be who the buyer is in terms of what industry they're in. It could be geolocation. It could be where the business is, if you're selling something which you think is better for startups than established businesses. But if, like I said, going back, 3 years ago, and businesses that are set up like that, they've gone, we can cover everything. So we've got the spend, we've got the backing to do so. So we can get across everything, and they spread themselves super thin. And it will work for them because they'll get the low hanging fruits in each one of those, sectors, whatever it may be. But then once you've got that low hanging fruit, but you're left with very little. So you've got to get into the next part of that sum, which is sellable, but maybe it's more competitive. There's, established vendors in that area, and they don't have the wealth of value props. And, based on each ICP, they don't have the wealth of partnerships, where they don't have the brand recognition within that industry. They don't talk the language, the tonality. And that's where they become unstuck. And that's that's probably the most prevalent problem that I go in. People say I'm stuck at 5 million or 10 million. We go, okay, you go back through that journey of how we've acquired that first 5 to 10 million. And that acquisition has come from being laid super thin. Like, there's no, real patterns in who their customers are. They might have some customers in EMEA, some in North America, some in South America that are, businesses at 500 million turnover, 5 million turnover. They've got crazy deals, huge differences in the deal sizes, things like that. And they're really proud of their achievements, and they should be proud of their achievements. But it becomes difficult is now trying to go from 10 million to 20 million, because we need to walk them back a couple of steps and say, okay, we've hit the low hanging fruit. And to get into that next layer of the sum, we need to be much more comprehensive than where we are. So we need to take multiple steps back, define that first ICP. So what is that first ICP? And like I say, is it industry, is it size, is it geographical location, all that stuff. And then really come up with comprehensive value props for that. And start within one industry. And then as you're successful there, you can then grow into a secondary or third industry. Okay, it doesn't have to be industry, it could be geographical location, it could be size of businesses. But a lot of founders and a lot of founding teams will see that as a huge step back when you say, they've got a portfolio that's sold over multiple regions, multiple industries, etc. To say, well, we're going to focus back on one, they see it as a huge step back. But the reality is, you have to do that step back to become more successful. And the byproduct of stepping back is you're also going to become more profitable because you're not spending huge amounts of money on, like a digital spend that's covering everywhere. But it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of founding teams. But it's the only way that they can get over that hump.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because obviously that experience of knowing that you have to go back to be able to actually successfully make it through to the next stage. I guess we're like talking like this iceberg scenario now. You've seen this big ocean of icebergs ahead.
Yeah.
What bad things happen if they don't take that step back and they just continue to push on?
The sales just drop off a cliff. Like you'll see that, because it is, and not to to diminish the achievements of these businesses at all, because they've done a huge amount of work to get to that 5 or that 10 million. But when it is so sporadic and you don't have that nailed on, granite ICP or multiple profiles, it really is. And I don't want to call it luck, because it's not luck, but they really are the low hanging fruits. You've stumbled over buyers, basically. You can normally tell that when you look at the install base of a company. If you look at an install base as a company and you see multiple geographic locations, multiple industries, multiple size of businesses, multiple contract lengths, multiple ACVs or MRRs, you can just see what it's been like. It's just a lay and spray, right? It's just been a complete scattergun, and you've hit some targets, like great. Once you've knocked all those down, like you've now got to get into the other targets, but the other targets are moving, they're flying quick, and you're probably not equipped for it. But you can generally tell based on the install base. Two things: based on the install base, and also when you look at the materials that business produces. You look at the website, the demos that they do. You can generally tell, like, are you articulating a value prop here, like a clear crystal value prop? Or are you just throwing loads of features in front of somebody and hoping that they create that value prop themselves and buy? And it's actually, it's difficult, because for these founders, they are successful. We've got our ARR is 5 million, is 10 million. Great, brilliant. But if you carry on doing this, it's only going to go the other way. You're going to have churn. You're not going to be able to fill that bucket up at the same rate that you're losing customers. And it's a tough pill to swallow. And I was in a business that got up to, when I joined, they were around 1.2 million in ARR, and had done that exact same thing. Just lay and spray. The conditions was fine for it. At the time, they were bootstrapped, didn't need money, but took money to accelerate. The typical thing: we'll take money to accelerate, we'll get there quicker. Great. All they did was create a really inflated commercial team. Too many AEs, too much marketing spend. They exhausted the low hanging fruit, that section of the sum, and then couldn't get past that. When I went in, they'd gone from it was 1.7 million, and we'd gone down to around 400k ARR in the space of 18 months. So it peaked and dropped off because churn was through the roof, new customers weren't coming in. And we stripped that business right down to 2 AEs, one AE, two SDRs, and an expansion AE, somebody to focus on that churn. Over 3 years, we built that back up in a more focused way, more created specialism, created more focus, and ultimately exited that business at 32 million ARR within that short space of time. But it needed completely stripping back to enable us to go forward. And it's rough, and a lot of founders don't want to do that, because it's a huge step backwards, but it's the only way. It's a sort of really cliched saying, isn't it? Sometimes you got to step backwards to move forwards, but it's so true. And we can go into more detail later or now if you like, but we did that by creating specialism, not only within creating different ICPs and value props and getting really tight, getting a good penetration in that in a specific market, and then widening slightly, and then widening slightly, and staffing the business on each one of those milestones. It's super challenging and super rewarding, but the only way was to right size first, save loads of money in terms of not just headcount but marketing costs too. Get a really, really tight ICP. When we aimed for at least at least a 5% penetration in this tight ICP before we would even consider. It turned out that we got to 10% pretty quickly in terms of penetration. Probably got super, just the size. It was the size of the business, it was an industry, and it was geolocation. So we could get super close to them. We can get partners that also touch all these, all this SAM too. We know their pains inside out. There's commonality in each one of these businesses. We get a really tight value prop. We can go to the events that they're at. We can do that to the partners. We can do trade press that they're at. And we became like an absolute powerhouse in there pretty much overnight. It was 6 months, really high penetration. And it was okay. Well, there's an adjacent market here, which we can do. So we opened that adjacent market ever so slightly. And this was insurance tech. And at the time we were selling to home improvements. So it was like a one to many sell. So it's like, okay, well, we can move into this, which is also home improvements, but it's adjacent to that. And then we can move into renewable energy because it's home improvements, it's solar panels, it's all this. But we created specialism in each one of those sectors, really unique value props in each one of those sectors that allowed us to get a level of penetration within each one that we never ever would have achieved if we was just seen as this generalized insurance tech platform.
Sure.
Nobody would have bought. We never would have reached those numbers.
Interesting. I was just being conscious that what we might have done is alienated some people who don't understand the terminology, and I think it would be a nice segue into the next part. So if we talk about this whole TAM, SAM, SOM, could you explain what that means, and then link into it how you work with marketing to make that actually come true in terms of growth?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think that even before you get to those acronyms, like your ICP will define that. Okay. So I think defining like your ideal customer profile is the most important thing. And like, so too many times businesses will just jump to having, a large, and I think a lot of this probably comes from when you're raising money. Because when you're raising money, you want to talk about how you have this huge TAM that you can sell to, because that's what you want. We can sell this thing to loads of people. We can take over the world, which might be true. People might buy, they might be able to, it might be true. They might be able to buy, they might be able to use it. But the reality is that you'll never get to that stage. So I think the most important thing out of all of that is defining an ICP and making a really tight, solid ICP. And it's one of the first questions that I ask companies that, companies I've joined or that I've consulted for is, who's your ICP? And I would say 9 times out of 10, the answer I get back is super, super woolly.
What's normally in that answer and what's missing?
So what I normally get is maybe it tends to be an industry or a job title. That's it. So, it's we sell to developers. Cool. Like just every we sell to every developer. Do you really? So like, talk to me about your customer base now. Is like, and again, if it is a completely sporadic kind of, thing, they've done that whole thing, right? They've just gone far too thin. Or they've done the right thing. They are much more targeted, or they've got a clearer value prop. And then you can drill down into that with them. So you can say, well, actually, you're saying that you sell to developers, but we can see here from your customer base that you're selling to developers that are in, maybe 3 industries that are in fintech, for example, like let's just say fintech, ed tech, and like HRIS. So you sell to developers in 3 areas, really. And all these, these companies' geographical location is EMEA. And they're all in businesses that are, maybe under 10 years old and have a turnover of less than 50 million.
Hmm.
So actually, your ICP isn't developers. Your ICP is developers in one of three industries in early stage SMBs. So that's your ICP. But then they'll get really protective of, oh no, we can sell to all developers. You can, but you're not doing. You're not doing. So there's something that, you know, developers outside the ICP aren't seeing. You can't articulate the value prop. There's other competitors that are much better fit in that, you know, in that world. Maybe you're coming up against a GitHub or something that, you know, an SMB can't afford, an enterprise can. But getting them to admit that is pretty hard. But that's before you even think about because everything else, like your TAM, your SOM, everything then comes from that ICP. Because if you're talking about your total addressable market, you don't want to talk about everybody that you can sell this to. You want to talk about what your ICP represents. So what that truly represents. But that's the biggest thing that I see is like super broad ICPs that isn't an ICP, right? It's just a title. Or the flip side is I'll get people that say, yeah, we sell to media businesses. Cool. So I mean, the company that I work for now, we sell, so that the part of the business that I work for, we sell to news and periodical newspapers. And I've done events where I'll, you know, be talking to a partner and they'll have a conversation. The partner will go, yeah, we sell to all media. You go, oh, cool. All right. And you get talking, you go, so what do you do for OTT and streaming? Oh, no, we don't have a product for OTT and streaming. So I thought you did media. What about film? Oh, no, we don't do any film. And you get talking to them, you go, actually, no, your ICP is news and periodical, right? It's what, you know, 20 years ago was a newspaper is now a newspaper online. That's your ICP, not media. Media isn't your ICP. News and periodical for enterprise level publishers in North America and EMEA. That is your ICP. And it's such a common mistake that business, because everything, like I said, that's the start. You're right, the ICP is the start. And that then goes on to what your total addressable market is, what your serviceable market is. And if you don't get that first bit right, you get some huge astronomical figures when you're looking at a TAM, which is great if you're a naive VC. Anything looks at this and goes, great. But it kills your pre-funnel, it kills your top of funnel, because you're then using the ICP to go to your marketing people and say, we need to create a persona around this. We need to do targeted marketing at these people. And the amount of marketing like teams that I've seen literally pulling their hair out because they're like, we're just doing LinkedIn campaigns to everybody. Or we're doing AdWords everywhere. Our spend is huge because we've got this massive TAM. So that was a really long-winded way of going, but I think that ideal customer profile is the most important thing. And I think for a lot of founding teams, like you're proud of what you've created and you genuinely believe you can sell this to everybody. You know, you think everybody will want this product, and that might be true, but get that ICP relatively narrow, because the narrower it is, the clearer you can articulate a value prop that is relatively similar every time you're doing, which means you'll have success, you'll have better conversion rates, better penetration. It's easier from marketing too. And once you get to a decent level of penetration, you can then go, okay, we're going to go slightly adjacent of this. Or, you know, maybe the ICP is, again, it's developers in those three sections, and you've gone from 50 million to 100 million. So the turnover of that business is slightly different. And there are nuances from a business at 20 million to a business at 80 million. They've got more budgets, so they can afford maybe more enterprise tooling, or their teams are bigger. So your sales cycle now is not just one persona, one person in the buying chain. You've now got 3 or 4 people that's the decision maker. Marketing has to be to 3 or to 2 additional personas. There's so much difference, even just selling within a very tight industry. But the difference between 50 and 100 million turnover of these businesses is a completely different sales cycle. Just getting really good and really tight in one thing and then expanding, and it's doing it that way, getting slightly wider each time. And like I said, that could be size of business, it could be an adjacent industry. So it could be news and periodical to now OTT and streaming. There's a few similarities, but there's enough differences that makes the sales cycle different. I think expanding that slowly, so as your ICP expands, your TAM expands, your SOM expands, but you should be able to carry the same penetration rate across as you expand. And I think that's the most important thing, and that's the biggest thing that I see missing in businesses is that this is our customer. This is really our customer. And on the flip side, I've had the pleasure of working with businesses that have gone in and had a super crisp ICP, and it's made things 10 times easier, because it really is just a case then of identifying, getting to a maximum penetration rate through sales and marketing efficiencies to make sure we're pretty well represented here. And, I've worked in businesses where we've had, I think at the last count for this, the current industry that I work in, we're at like 60% penetration rate of our ICP. Huge. So the next thing is obviously to expand that ICP. But I've had the pleasure of, on the flip side, of working with companies that have had such a perfect ICP that, you go in, like I said, you're making some efficiencies, you're saving some money here, you're making some money there. And then the big task then is, okay, how do we widen that gauge slightly? What's the new ICP?
Yeah, makes sense. I was just thinking when you were talking about like this whole like total addressable market, here's all the people we could sell to. It reminds me of Dragon's Den. Yeah. Every pitch on Dragon's Den goes, we've got this revolutionary toothbrush head, and the toothbrush market in the world is worth $2.7 trillion.
Yeah.
And if we just get 0.1% of that market, which should be very attainable, then we'll have a valuation of this business. And the dragons are like, what are you talking about? But a lot of people hear that massive number and then they go, oh, that gives us security and comfort. It's not like we're trying to create a market. There's a market there. But yeah, is there demand, and do people get it? And like, it just doesn't make any difference.
But imagine going in, instead of saying, we have this universal toothbrush head that everybody can use. You go in, you say, we've got this, we know the problem. Kids don't want to brush their teeth. Like, kids don't want to brush their teeth, they're kids. We've got this super interactive toothbrush that is Bluetooth and does all these really cool things. And, we think that, we know that kids are 20 times more likely to brush their teeth with this. And there's X amount of trillion kids here. It's a much more compelling story than, 0.1% is going to buy our toothbrush head customer.
Yeah.
Oral-B's got a slice. Like, Colgate's got a slice. We'll get a little slither. Like, having a story, like, and again, a value prop. Like, there's a problem. Kids don't want to brush their teeth. This is interactive. It'll make them brush their teeth. It sings, it dances, it lights up, it does whatever.
Yeah.
It's a much more compelling story. You've got an ICP now. Your ICP are kids. It's, I don't know, whatever, 4 to 8 year olds or something like that. So, okay, how do we market to 4 to 18-year-olds? Well, it's going to be cartoons on a Saturday morning. It's going to be, on Mum's Net for mums that are worried that the kids' teeth are going to be falling out. Everything just falls into place. Like, you're not talking about huge national advertising campaigns on billboards that kids aren't going to see. You're super narrow in everything that you do. That's a great example. Time after time, you speak to a founder, and that is the thing. It's super 0.1%. That's all we need.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're watching this in 2034, this is the first time Paul ever spoke about his multi-trillion-dollar toothbrush company that he's just founded. It was born here. What makes you tick, Paul? Amazing. Thank you for listening and watching this Best Bits short. If you like this, tune in next Sunday for our next special part of our favorite episodes. And if you love the main podcast, every Thursday we introduce you to a new virtual mentor so you can hear their career story and answers to the biggest questions in tech. See you on the next episode.